Nick Thompson, thank you so much for joining us today. Nick Thompson, Cipher Brief expert and former CIA Paramilitary Officer. Um, Among your many areas of expertise, we know this because we've asked you about it before, are the workings and security concerns surrounding the vast undersea cable network that runs around the world, and I'm not sure people know that much about. And it's in the news now because authorities in Taiwan are investigating a Hong Kong-owned vessel that has apparently damaged one of these undersea fiber optic cables not far from Taiwan. Actually, I believe it links Taiwan to the rest of the region. First of all, just to get us started, can you tell us, Nick, what you know about this particular incident?
Sure thing, Tom. So it's been busy 90 days in the undersea cable world. Now this latest incident on January 3rd in northwest Taiwan, we have a Chinese named vessel that is registered to Cameroon, but there's actually a belief that it might be even another African country. We've got reports of this vessel using its AIS, automatic identification system, at times and then turning it off. But long story short, we had another cable severed. Now, Taiwanese telecom company first reported it, and actually the Taiwanese Coast Guard, launched a team. This was in territorial waters of Taiwan. They launched a team. I believe it was about, I want to say, 8 or 9 nautical miles. Unfortunately, they were not able to put somebody on the vessel, kind of in a visit board search and seizure scenario. The vessel kind of denied requests to stay in the area for an inspection, and it sailed on its way towards South Korea. Now the Taiwanese have reached out to the South Koreans. They've requested assistance. I believe the vessel is headed to the mega port city of Busan.
But so everything we read, and maybe we're coming to you because you're an expert, and maybe we shouldn't believe everything we read, but suggests, for sure this is part of the pressure campaign against Taiwan levied by the mainland. But first of all, how, just as a general matter, how does an investigator, a country, a defense ministry, whomever, how do they know whether it's an accident or subterfuge, sabotage, what have you?
Sure. So again, it depends a little bit, but the narrative of we accidentally dropped an anchor and then we dragged it for 10, 20, 100 nautical miles before we accidentally cut the cable is very frankly silly. If I'm on a 20-foot sailboat by myself, setting the anchor is a little bit of an art. It's an evolution. So when you're talking about vessels that are 700 feet long, 100 feet wide, that is a big piece of machinery going to the seafloor. And so there's cavitation. You're obviously going to notice that. It's going to affect your speed. And so the whole anchor theory of, oh, we accidentally did this is frankly just absolutely ridiculous.
Not going to hold up in court.
No, not going to hold up.
Well, but not to be, I shouldn't be so flip about it, but there isn't really, I mean, I guess part of the issue with a lot of, not just the undersea cable cutting, but these gray zone activities is there isn't really a court, right? I mean, and you're not, let's shift in this same conversation, this same vein to the Baltic, where that's what we were talking about with you the last time we connected on this issue. And talk a little bit about what we've seen there. And again, how we know or don't know that these cuts on the seafloor in the Baltic, again, of undersea cables, are in that case carried out on purpose by the Russians or accidental?
Sure. So the Baltic incidents are very interesting. You had one in November, and then we had the December event, pretty much Christmas Day, 25th, 26th. But starting with the November event, that was that was a Chinese vessel. Now there's some reporting and there's some indication that maybe the Chinese state was not behind that, and maybe Russian intelligence bribed a crew member, and there was at least one Russian member on that vessel. So maybe that was just a pay for play, do this damage, kind of a quick down and dirty operation. That was 2 cables though. That was Sweden to Lithuania, and that was Finland to Germany. Now the December event, the Christmas one event, that's a suspected Russian shadow vessel. I believe it was called the Eagle S. Finland actually seized the vessel. So that was, I think a lot of people kind of applauded that. That hasn't really happened, another country seizing the vessel. And I want to say within the last 24 hours, they've actually raised the anchor They've actually inspected it. Kind of TBD what happens with the crew members. Are they going to face some kind of charges? Well, that'll be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. And you mentioned damage. I think a lot of people who aren't so familiar with this, and I count myself in that group, are going to think, okay, a cable in the Baltic, a cable in Taiwan. Uh, Talk a little bit, if you could, about what sort of damage can be inflicted on countries, on societies, on regions, even. What do these undersea cables do, and what happens if they are cut?
Yeah, so it's probably underestimated the importance that they play in kind of our everyday lives, but there's really three major pillars that they hit, and it's economic, comms, and just regular internet. But on the economic side, trillions of dollars in transactions. But the undersea cables tend to be cheaper, more reliable than satellite service, and so they've been traditionally kind of vulnerable. They're not. Sometimes they're just laid, on the seafloor. They're not. Maybe they're buried, but they're not buried very, very deep. It's usually public, unclassified information of where they are. So we have an idea of where they are, and they've frankly been kind of like, flying under the radar a little bit. I think, kind of like the defense of what we're doing, what we're seeing, and the Taiwanese, I think, probably understand this better than most, is the resiliency and the redundant comms piece. And
Hmm.
so this most recent attack, January 3rd, I think it's a good news story that the data was rerouted to another undersea cable. But what I also think we need to be looking at is, the Leo constellations to where you could even reroute resilient communication data flow from subsea into space. And so I think
Hmm.
that's gradually gaining momentum. But to speak to your original question, how important is it? I mean, we're talking, military communication. Think about how much we depend on our lives just for regular internet. Some of those military communications are encrypted. Some of
Hmm.
them probably aren't. Some countries are more susceptible to other undersea types of sabotage, to include espionage, bending fiber and stealing data that way.
And the global financial system too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you touched on it a little bit, but are there other things that United States or other countries should be doing to mitigate against this? I mean, how protected are we? Again, we're talking about bodies of water that are far from our shores, but how are there things the United States should be doing? Because obviously we're connected in the same way as well.
Sure. Yeah, a couple things come to mind. I already mentioned the kind of resiliency
Hmm.
of looking at rerouting information, but I think enhanced monitoring, surface, surface, subsurface, and air, especially in the realm of autonomous systems. That's going to free up other assets, other manned assets that have other, really important missions. So I think AUVs underwater, you have hydrophones that could be listening, you have unmanned surface vessels, maybe as deterrence. And then you could also even have unmanned rotary and fixed wing surveilling the area, especially of, places that are probably vulnerable. I really like the seizure that happened,
Hmm.
and then also, stop and searching. Having rapid response teams, kind of that feeds into repair. So you don't have to traditionally have, ships are, people don't usually understand how expensive ships are on a day-to-day cost. But if
Yeah.
you talk about maybe smaller ships, lean crews that can get places very, very quick, use an AUV to maybe find the area, AUV into an ROV operation for maybe the repair. Maybe you've already done some rerouting, intelligent routing, as they say on the data. So
Mhm.
this could be, you could be up and running very, very quickly potentially.
Wow, there's a lot of sci-fi stuff in there. Nick
Yeah.
Thompson, last question for you. You told us when we last spoke about this that the quote geopolitical landscape was throwing gasoline on the fire of the undersea cable issue. Can you explain to our audience what you meant by that?
Yeah, so I kind of was thinking about just like where is this headed, because we just haven't seen this kind of in the open source realm lately. But where is it going? And that's kind of what I was getting at is I think it's going to be increased covert ops targeting strategic locations and conflict zones. So that tends to be what we've really seen is kind of like the Russian model, the Chinese model. But let's not forget about what are the Iranians doing? You have Bandar Abbas. They have huge coastline. You have the Straits of
Right.
Hormuz. You have the North Koreans now, so they're pushing troops obviously to help the Russians. What are they doing with their nuclear aspirations? So I just think it's widening from maybe what we've seen traditionally as kind of Russia and China to it's probably going to take place in other areas around the globe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Well, you've given us a lot to chew on and really helpful, and I'm sure it's not the last time we'll be talking about this. But Nick Thompson, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us at the Cipher Brief.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tom.